Hey, thanks, Arnie. Appreciate it. I know we are the last presentation standing in front of you and lunch, I believe. Hopefully we'll make sure that this is certainly worth your time. My name's Brandon Herlihy. I'm the head of business development with Lawfty. Lawfty is a DC-based personal injury firm that has created a San Francisco technology company with the sole purpose of turning personal injury case generation into a science. Now, just a little background on myself and how I got involved with Lawfty. I've been in financial sales for a little over 12 years. I was connected with our CEO and managing partner, Todd Richheimer, who'll be speaking momentarily, through a mutual friend. And what he showed me was there was a huge void in the personal injury marketing space, and how this void can be filled by utilizing data and technology. Now, this was something I was used to in the financial sector. So not only was I interested, but I thought, wow, this is a really nice opportunity. So Todd actually graduated from Emory College. Prior to going to law school at WashU in St. Louis, he was working as an investment banker for Bear Stearns in New York City. Then he had several different traditional litigation roles before finally meeting our co-founder, Mike Terry, who's also in the audience. So I'd like to turn it over to Todd and take her away.
Thanks, Brandon. Thank you all for being here. So before getting started, a little caveat. This is my first time speaking at a conference. I am usually the person in your seat. And something that drives me nuts about conferences is when these things turn into sales pitches, right? The goal here is to hopefully leave you with something interesting, something to think about. And so that's my promise to you. Now, the reason I bring it up as a caveat is because in order to explain sort of our view on the industry and how you can use data science to get more cases, I am going to talk a little bit about what we do. So I think the appropriate place to start is where we were founded. As Brandon had mentioned, my background is in both litigation as well as finance. And I always knew I wanted to do my own thing. Had that entrepreneurial bug, but knew that if I wanted to start my own firm, I'd have to get some litigation experience first. So practiced as a litigator in a whole bunch of different traditional litigation type roles for 6.5 years, and was about to start my own firm. I was about 6 months out, and my idea about starting a personal injury firm was to be sort of tech forward, data enabled, if you will, and very business savvy. It was sort of my definition of what the next generation personal injury firm looked like. As luck would have it, my wife and I rented a room at a share house in the Hamptons, and it was there that I met my co-founder, Mike, who is, this was a surprise appearance. He wasn't planning on being here, but just flew in from San Francisco. So he's got drinking lots of coffee. But I met Mike, and I never met anybody with his expertise. I'm going to make him blush here, but super, super smart. Went to MIT, undergrad and postgrad, has degrees in both computer science and electrical engineering. And we hit it off. We just started brainstorming. And I had never met anybody with Mike's expertise. He was the guy that was able to bring all these wacky ideas I had to life. And so after that weekend, I pushed off the founding of my own firm. And Mike and I literally got together every Saturday for just about 1.5 years before launching Lawfty. And we would just kick around ideas. And when we started Lawfty, we had 3 different ideas that we were going to go to market with. And the idea was to see if there was a good product market fit between what we wanted to offer and what the market would accept. So we had 3 ideas, and we got started. And it became really apparent really quickly within 2 months which the best idea was. And the best idea by far was to turn case generation for personal injury and mass tort lawyers into a science. And the reason why we reached that conclusion is important. One, you took 2 guys that knew absolutely nothing about digital advertising and were able to succeed in New York City. It was the light bulb went off, ding, ding, ding. How is that possible in New York City that 2 guys that know absolutely nothing about advertising could start generating cases immediately? 2 was we then took a step back based on those results and said, okay, what's going on in this market? And we took a very macroeconomic approach or view towards the marketplace. And what we realized was this. Historically, you had 4 different avenues to advertise, right? You had TV, radio, billboards, and the yellow pages. 4 very independent channels of advertising, right? You could keep those in individual silos. You could work with different vendors to advertise in any one of those channels. And those people never needed to talk to each other. They didn't need to share any data. It wasn't very difficult to attribute where a particular client came from so long as the vendor you were using and the firm was set up properly. Well, now fast forward to today, right? Today, the digital landscape is expanding every day. So instead of 4 independent channels of advertising, you now have a landscape of dozens, if not hundreds, of interrelated channels, right? Think about it. Everything from pay-per-click advertising to organic search to social media, and then all the sites you could advertise on, right? From Facebook to Instagram to Snapchat, right? What's going to replace TV? Is it Amazon, Hulu, Netflix? What's going to happen there? What about video, right? YouTube is a huge search engine, okay? Wearable devices, what's going to happen there? Voice search, right? Everybody's been reading about Amazon's Echo. Somebody's going to be in their home and say, I need a personal injury attorney. Well, the framework that we used historically of having independent, isolated vendors work on every different channel of advertising is broken, and it doesn't work today. And our thesis at Lawfty is that the vendor model is dead. Now, that's not to say there aren't great vendors out there. There are tremendous vendors that are doing great work. However, one of 2 things are going to have to happen. One, either vendors are going to have to start collaborating, right? Or 2, you're going to see more and more companies like Lawfty pop up that have taken the time to build, and these are buzzwords, which I'm going to explain in a second, a full funnel, vertically integrated solution. And I'm going to come back to those in a second. The reason why you need those is because without them, if you have your vendors operating in independent silos, you're not capturing the data that can make personal injury advertising repeatable, right? Instead, you're playing into yesterday's mentality, right, where it's this spray and pray approach. I'm going to spend tons of money on advertising, and I'm going to hope cases come in. That framework's broken. So full funnel. If there is one thing that you take away from today's presentation, wait, I see, you want me to stay over here? Okay, here we are. So if there's one thing that you take away from this presentation, I want you to start thinking about your advertising efforts as a funnel, right? At the very top, you have what people are searching for. At the bottom, you have cases that ultimately monetize, right? So I'm going to walk you through the funnel, which is hopefully going to illustrate why having independent vendors work on each segment of the funnel is extraordinarily problematic, right? So at the top of the funnel, let's take pay-per-click advertising as an example. So at the top, somebody searches for New York Bar Association lawyer, okay? So they type in that word, and an ad pops up. Now, is that ad appealing? Are they going to click on that ad? Well, that's a discipline in and of itself, right? Making that ad appealing to the person and then tracking the click-through rate and seeing how many times that ad shows versus how many times somebody clicks on it. So now let's say they click on the ad and they're driven to your website. They come to your website. Are they taking the desired action? Are they inquiring? Take Amazon as an example. Amazon probably has hundreds, if not thousands of people working on making sure that their landing pages convert more effectively. Meaning out of every 100 people that come to your website, do 15 inquire? Is it 20? Is it 25? That's another area of expertise you need, right? And you're working on things like, should the font be Times New Roman or Arial? Should the color be black or red? Should the number be in the top right or the bottom left? Should you even have a form submission box? You should constantly be advertising and testing landing page versus landing page. Okay, then the person inquires. And I was listening to Gary Falkowitz's conversation before, and I love how he used the term bridge, right? What happens when you go from the online world to the offline world? People are ignoring that. What's the point of advertising if you're not applying data and metrics to what happens when that lead comes off the internet and into your office? Who's picking up the phone? What script are they using? Which of your intake people are converting better than others? How long are the people waiting on hold before they get somebody? What's the drop rate? All things you should be testing and tracking. Then it goes to a lawyer, How long is that case on the lawyer's desk? Ultimately, what the case monetizes for. And then this is the key. Think about from the top of that funnel all the way to the bottom, how many variables went into determining whether you got that case, whether you kept that case, and whether you monetized that case. Right? Now take all of that data, and this is what Lawfty is working on, throw it back up to the top of the funnel, use tools like, and I'm sure you've heard these buzzwords before, machine learning or artificial intelligence, and make sense of the noise. Take all of these variables that can't mean anything in isolation and make sense of it, and then make the advertising repeatable. So instead of throwing hundreds of millions of dollars into an industry with this mentality of spray and pray, right, you turn it into a science. Now, the only way to do that is either vendors collaborating, right, or do it like we have and built a vertically integrated team, right, meaning that we've put everybody under one roof. So you're thinking of, in order to do this effectively, think of all the expertise that you need. You need quantitative developers like Mike. You need web developers. You need front-end designers and user experience people to test your landing page. You need data scientists. You need lawyers, videographers, content folks. So the point is that it takes a lot of collaboration to make sure that you're capturing the data as it flows through the funnel. So you have a two-part problem. One, in order to make the advertising repeatable, right, you've got to capture the data. But two, just from a self-preservation perspective, think about how many holes you could have in that funnel as the client's coming through, right? You could have search terms that aren't working. You could have ad copy that's repelling people. You could have phone numbers that aren't working. You could have landing pages that aren't loading properly. If people aren't talking, if the people in the different areas of expertise, if the data scientist isn't talking to the front-end engineer, you never know. You will never know if it's working or not, and you are wasting money. So you're probably wondering why this is, right? There's so much money. There's hundreds of millions of dollars being spent in this industry. It's not billions of dollars on advertising. Why is it that Silicon Valley hasn't fashioned a solution and applied it to lawyers? I could go on about this topic for hours. I won't bore you, but I'll leave you with this thought. Lawyers have unnecessarily harmed themselves via the rules of professional conduct. The reason being is if you think about the way technology is developed and businesses are grown, right? It's through accessing capital. Well, lawyers, because we can't take on non-lawyer owners in our firms, we don't have access to traditional capital. The venture capital world is off limits to us, right? So what you have is a bunch of haphazard, stuck together solutions that do not care about your interests, but only care about making a buck. And a perfect example is if you think about the current lead generation solutions out there, right? What are you paying? You pay price per relevant lead, or you pay a percentage of your ad spend. Who cares about price per relevant lead? What you care about is how much you're paying per signed case, right? What you care about is what the return on your advertising investment is. The rest of it is nonsense. I mean, I'd be shocked if I found 1 out of every 10 lawyers who could tell me how many relevant leads it takes to get a case, how many relevant leads it takes to get a motor vehicle accident, how many relevant leads it takes to get a case that monetizes for 3 times your advertising investment. The truth is that there's a lot of money being wasted and lawyers aren't being provided the solutions they deserve. Now, I think there's a tremendous opportunity out there for lawyers that are willing to take a very tech-enabled, very data-centric approach to growing their practices. Historically, you look through every market, and I've gotten a good 50-state survey, if you will, of the personal injury landscape. Every market has the 10,000-pound gorilla. The firm that's spending $1 million a month on advertising to build this gigantic brand, right? And historically, they competed and dominated the marketplace by the size of their wallet. The little guy couldn't compete, and they couldn't compete for 2 reasons. One, if you think about the barrier to entry, it was huge, right? The little guy couldn't get on TV or radio in any meaningful manner. And then once they got on TV or radio, the big guy was able to purchase the advertising for significantly cheaper than them, given their buying power and ability to take advantage of economies of scale. This is our thesis at Lawfty, and I'd highly encourage those in the room to think about this at length. I will argue, till I'm blue in the face, that we're at an inflection point in our industry. This is your opportunity as a small and mid-sized firm to quote unquote, kill the king. And the reason I say that is because moving forward, the firms that are able to acquire cases are not going to be able to do it by the size of their wallet alone. It's going to be the size of their wallet plus their sophistication. And I think you have to look no further than that phone that's sitting in each one of your pockets, right? So think about New York, right? You turn on the TV and you can't help but hear the Celino and Barnes jingle, right? Here's the issue with building a giant brand. 70% of search volume is going through mobile devices. Now, that's not to say that building a brand is not a tremendous asset, because it absolutely is. But what I'm saying is it's becoming less and less effective because somebody goes to their phone, it's the first point of search, they search for "I need a lawyer." It doesn't matter if they heard a jingle or they knew the brand, they're clicking on the first advertisement they see. And you look at the screen size on your phone, there's not a whole lot of room for advertising. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity, and I could go on with this forever. But I wanted to make sure that we left time to ask any questions. I'm glad that my technical co-founder is here, so if you ask technical questions, he's available to answer them.
I do have a question with
Sure.
that, because as a middle-sized company, we're trying to get in, but like what you said, that the bigger company have spent enough money in it. By them spending enough money in it, they've grown organically already. So it gets to the point that it's true, they're paying for pay-per-click, that they can spend more money than what I can. But organically, when I type into my phone, "I need a lawyer," they've been at it so long. So how good is business intelligence if they've spent way ahead of that? Even if they don't spend anymore, organically they're ahead. How can I compete with that?
I think there's two parts to that question, right? So I think you need to separate the world of organic search versus pay-per-click, right? So Google makes 95%, literally 95% of their revenue off of pay-per-click advertising, right? So pay-per-click being the ads that show at the top, and then underneath it, organic search. You don't pay anything for organic, right, which is the benefit. Now, the bad part about that is, one, is ads have taken up the entire top portion of your screen, right? So you got to scroll pretty significantly at this point to see the organic search. Number two, the rules of the road when it comes to organic are changing all the time, and Google can do that because they're not, biting the hand that feeds them, if you will. When it comes to paid search, I would argue that bigger is not necessarily better. What we have found is that lawyers are paying way, way too much for clicks. If you look at Google, I think that their published statistics say that the terms attorney and lawyer range between $25 and $35 a click. And then once you get into terms like mesothelioma, God knows, you could pay close to 1,000. Our cost per click ranges between $3 and $5. And what I found is that lawyers, and this is another big takeaway in my opinion, are sitting in a room trying to put themselves in the position of those that have been injured in an accident. And they've unnecessarily bid up words. I think my client's going to search for car accident lawyer. I think they're going to search for wrongful death attorney. They have no idea what wrongful death is. And lawyers have unnecessarily bid up those words. So I think that there's a more scientific game to be played.
But because of the exposure, because of the marketing money that these big companies have, bigger law firms do, they can grow organically much faster than I can.
Sure.
So then the only way I can compete with them is if I spend more. But I can't spend more because they're spending more than I do. So how do I get that balance of
Direct response.
correct?
Right? So think of pay-per-click advertising and advertising on Facebook or potentially advertising on YouTube as direct response marketing, right, where you're not building a brand. And think of SEO or organic search as what you're talking about. Have to spend lots. Essentially the right way to think of organic search is a popularity contest in the eyes of Google. What Google's doing is they're throwing their bot out there and they're saying who is the most relevant for this particular search. And the only way to do that is with a boatload of money where you're producing a ton of content, right? But pay-per-click and Facebook and all these other channels I was talking about have evened the playing field, right? Because you don't have to spend a boatload of money. You can go into the marketplace and say, you know, I mean, there is a barrier to entry, but it's much smaller, where you could say, I'm going to spend $10,000 this month or $5,000 this month and outrank them.
Yeah, correct.
Any other questions? All right, excellent. Well, I'll let you guys enjoy your lunch.